With Brexit, right now Britain needs all the friends it can get. But instead of making friends, it seems willing to make enemies. After the departure from the European Union in 2019, Britain will be increasingly dependent on nations which were part of the British Empire, many of which were occupied and exploited. Some subjects of these nations came to Britain. Now the sons and daughters of one group of immigrants have felt the pressure of an extreme immigration policy. They're called the Windrush generation, and this is Windrush Square. Since the 1940s, thousands of Caribbeans came to the United Kingdom for work and a new life. Yet vital records, such as Windrush generation landing cards, have been destroyed. Evidence shows the government knew for years of the problems experienced by children of Windrush immigrants. A Foreign Office official responsible for resettling deported Jamaicans even stated on the Foreign Office website many consider themselves British, having moved to the UK as a young child with their parents or grandparents and granted indefinite leave to remain. The official goes on to raise worrying issues about the policies towards this group of UK residents. A number received demands to leave Britain and return to the Caribbean, even though they've lived their entire adult lives in the UK. But instead of admitting its failures, despite this scandal, the Home Office could get new powers to withhold information from the public about their immigration status. This could make it almost impossible for applicants to get reliable data about themselves from the department, making it much harder to challenge bad immigration decisions by the Home Office, increasing the risk of miscarriages of justice. Was the mistreatment of Caribbeans accidental or planned? And what does it say about official British attitudes towards the Caribbean community? Simple questions with important answers. The Home Office could get sweeping data protection exemptions to prevent people from getting information about their own immigration status. That would deprive applicants of a reliable way to obtain files about themselves from the department. What are the public's thoughts on this? We asked them. Here's what they said.
The thing is, sometimes they reject people. Like me, I'm pregnant. I applied for my mother-in-law to help me, but she hasn't gotten the passport. We'll be waiting for it for now. We did this application about 2 weeks ago. I have not heard from the Home Office, and my due date is just June.
I just think it's absolutely atrocious the way that they behaved. They knew all along what they were doing.
You can't go and say, oh, we're responsible for this country, we're responsible for this country only when there's a disaster. But when there's not a disaster and they've already done everything that is benefiting this country, then you tell them, no, we don't need you.
What I think about it is that the government, they knew full well what they were doing, particularly Amber Rudd's right-hand woman, Theresa May. I also feel that this is happening in order to make something that's already difficult, the discourse, the language, the narrative that people use. We use basic language out here, but the parties seem to be using massive words to bamboozle people. I think they're doing it along with making it difficult to get through to your papers because it's a deliberate ploy to make more money. If you have to keep paying and paying and paying because you don't get refunds from the Home Office, then that is what I think is going to be filling up the government's coffers.
It is quite a disgraceful situation with what's happened to the Caribbean community, and this has been going on for a long time. We've known about it, it's just that it's come to the attention of the press. So the battle has been continuing for years against the Home Office, especially since Theresa May became the Home Secretary.
Yeah, I do, because they don't want to give people their pensions that they've worked for. If someone's been here for 30 and 40 years, who are they sending them back to Jamaica to? Their family would have died and passed on. Who are they sending them back to?
So this is basically a case of the government trying to do a couple of things, trying to take away more rights from immigrants to disorientate them. But also the government, I believe, is bringing in this policy to cover its own tracks, because now with the latest development with the Windrush scandal, by the way, we're going to see more, it's become very clear what they've been up to. So now I think it's a case of PR disaster management. They want to salvage their reputation as much as possible. They won't be able to. We've seen the example of Amber Rudd. She said one day there were no immigration removal targets. Now it's been proven that there were. So you're going to see that the government be contradicted, be shown to be hypocrites at many more junctures down the line. This policy is a direct, desperate attempt to cover up their own tracks. Nothing more than that.
Basically, for me, it's not difficult, you know, it's not complicated. It's just another example of the higher powers feeling that they have the right to violate people's human rights, whether it be taking away their data, whether it be not offering them the right housing or whatever it may be. But this is just an example of them saying, we can do what we like. There's not much you lot can do. We've got the information. What are you going to do about it, basically? But really and truly, another way to look at it is that we shouldn't really be so dependent on these organisations holding our information, you know? We should have our own libraries and our own databases where we can hold our own information, whether it be information about immigration or whether it be our own history, you understand? We need to take control of our own history and not let someone else tell it for us, you know? We need to tell our own story ourselves. So for that reason, we need our own control over our own information, you know?
The government has known this issue has been a growing problem for some time. Does the British public think the current mistreatment of the Caribbean community is a result of bad organisation or a deliberate immigration policy?
I think on purpose. On purpose. Yeah, to save the NHS some money and save taxpayers as well.
It's not a conspiracy, it's designed. It can't be random. The Guardian's been talking about people being under pressure to, I believe the country will be deported over the last 2 or 3 years. So if people who read the Guardian know about this, then surely the Home Office should know about this. So it's not an accident, it's not a default, it's down to design.
It's deliberate, it's not an accident, it's deliberate. Because it's all planned, because it's all part of their immigration quotas. So it's not an accident, it's something that they thought about and they knew what they were doing.
This is a way of giving new Commonwealth immigrants a redundancy bill that says you're no longer needed and you're no longer wanted here.
It's a plan because, okay, when Brexit is gone, who are they going to depend on again? The same colonial islands that you just run the people from.
It is not an accident. This has been going on, particularly with Jamaica, from time immemorial. What we've got to remember is that out of all the other Caribbean islands, and you can check this factually, Jamaica and the generation of sugar that was made and the revenue that was made from sugar through the sugar plantation in Jamaica actually helped the British to change from an agrarian society to the steam engine power. So we, as Jamaicans, contributed the most.
I can't say for sure if it was on purpose, but certainly the black community has been hit as one of the hardest. I know the communities have been affected, but I know ours have been hit as one of the hardest.
I do think it's a plan. They have got a motive behind what they're doing. You know, some people may give up and just say, oh, they're going, but what are you going back to? If you don't have a living out there, you can't survive.
I think this policy by the Conservative government is working exactly how it was meant to work. I believe the foundations for this were laid when Theresa May was in the Home Office, and now she's simply continuing this legacy. And I believe this policy and treatment of Caribbean communities is designed to send two messages. One, it's designed to send a message to immigrant communities that you are not welcome, it's open season on you, and you do not have any rights. The second message this policy is designed to send is a message to all people in this country that have embraced this crazy nationalism that we're seeing, which basically blames immigrants for all of the country's problems, social, economic, etc. You'll notice the political centre ground has shifted. The political centre ground has gone more and more right wing, and all the political parties have played into this rhetoric against immigrants on one level or another.
Well, the current treatment of the Caribbean community is not a surprise to me, you know. For me, number one, I'm from Brixton. I understand they don't treat us good at all. It's not really we're not high on their priorities ever. So this isn't a surprise for me, but we have to understand is nothing's coincidental, you know. There's always an agenda behind anything that happens. So we have to look look for the underlying reason why this is even happening in the first place, you know? So, yeah, for me, nothing's coincidental. There's an agenda behind it, and people have to look deeper into the situation, more so than skiffling across the top, you know? Because these government policies are just a disguise for another reason why they want to put us back another 100 years or another 50 years, you know? They're always trying to put people down when they're rising and when they're on the rise, you know? So we have to look deeper into the situation, basically.
Politicians at ministerial level say the Windrush scandal echoes Nazi Germany in the way in which people lost their rights and their identity. Does the public agree, and why?
No, I think that's not fair. If I've been in this country and I'm illegal, I think whenever I did the application, I should be able to get it. I think that would be fair. But, you know, some people left their own country, so being in this country for quite some years, I think those people should be allowed to stay and not send them back home.
Obviously now they've got a chance to rise against what they're planning to do. So it's, you know, they will have a chance to have a say, and they will have a chance, I believe, to actually put an end or to stop it altogether. Because obviously they can't afford to upset everybody, can they? Or the majority they cannot afford to upset.
Right now, there is widespread support for the Commonwealth immigrants and what they've experienced and suffered.
They claim that they're the ones that wrote these laws, put them into place, and when it's convenient for them, they change it. Oh, we're going to add this or we're going to edit this, just so that the people who they don't want it to benefit should not get.
I'm thinking that the government, had it not been for the fact that a couple of white mainstream people, as in The Guardian, got hold of this story, I think it would have been harder for people of colour, or black people as I like to call them, to have done anything to change what is going on. This is absolutely wrong. It is racism. It is from the upper echelons all the way down. The whole of the state is, and the whole of this government is absolutely riddled with racism.
Definitely with those who've been impacted by the situation, yes, their whole life was turned upside down. It's very, very distressing to witness, actually, what people have gone through.
I think not, because you've come here and you've associated yourself with being British and whatever, then it is losing your identity where you thought you were somebody, and then you've discovered that you're not anybody at all, you don't even exist. I think it's ridiculous. I really do think it's bad.
I do agree with this comparison, and I agree because over the last 7 or 8 years, you've seen the gradual erosion of immigrants' rights, you've seen the rhetoric against immigrants build up in the media, and Theresa May, who was in charge of the Home Office a few years ago, she's now continuing the legacy she began there. It's open season on immigrants, it's open season on migrants, and actually you've seen all the political parties on one level or another play into this mythology about immigrants. And what you've had is, rather than the political class countering this false narrative that immigrants are to blame for the economic decline, you've basically seen the political class play to it for electoral gain. That's why you've seen UKIP dissipate. The vote has been swallowed up, not just by the Conservatives, but by the other political parties too. So I think in addition to this, the other comparison you might want to make is that you're seeing increasingly immigrants locked up in immigration detention centres being raped, being mistreated, being denied their legal rights. And if you want to look at the workers' camps, the immigrant camps, specifically for Jews, but not just Jews, in Nazi Germany, you're seeing a very worrying comparison.
Losing our identity, yeah, that's a big statement, you know. I think losing their rights, yes, but for me, my identity is something no one can take from me, you know. No one has ownership over my identity, so people can write whatever documents they want to write and keep them and store them where they want to keep them. I know who I am. African, Irish, Jamaican, I know me. So identity-wise, I don't think that's an issue, but their rights, yeah, people's rights are being infringed on, and that happens all over the world every day, you know. It's not a surprise. So people need to wake up and see the bigger picture, you know. This is just an example, another example of them doing exactly what they like for whatever reason they like, you know. So as people, collectively, black, white, whatever colour we may be, we need to think about the bigger picture and collectively come together and do something about it, you know.
The Windrush generation gets its name from the ocean liner Empire Windrush, which carried 500 Caribbean immigrants from Jamaica to Britain in 1948 for a new life and new work opportunities. By 1961, an estimated 172,000 had joined the Windrush generation in the United Kingdom. By 2011, the number of UK residents claiming to have a West Indian background had risen to about 600,000. That equates to roughly 1% of the British population.
Labour MP David Lammy says he suffered racial abuse after speaking out in support of Windrush immigrants. What are the public's views on this?
No, that's not fair. I think that's not good. I think I wouldn't say it would be racist, but then UK needs more people to work and pay tax to improve the economy of the system. So
that happens all the time. You know, you face that all the time, constantly. But it just shows the ignorance and the small-mindedness of certain people.
For me, I appreciate David Lammy's opinion and the way that he approached the government because, for one, every time someone decides to speak the truth, there's always a problem. It's always easy for people to do what is good, as we call it good, but not what is right.
I think David Lammy had a right to say what he was saying. One, because his people came from the Windrush generation. Two, because he's been black all his life. I know that sounds like a pun, but he's been black. He knows what it's like to be working against this. I think people who do not want to understand the situation of other people who are in diverse situations like myself and people that come from the Windrush generation really they're going to make a noise anyway, because if they looked at this, it's easy to understand it's racism. What's going on?
We've contributed so much to this British development after the end of the war, and where is the thanks to the nurses, to all the professionals that came here? Where is the thanks?
Do you know what? The truth always offends. The truth will always hurt somebody. But you know what? Rub it and get on with it. If you know it's the truth, then just admit it's the truth. Nobody can kill you for telling the truth. You know, I think people will forgive you more if you acknowledge that you're wrong than you're lying about it. And why should he be abused? He's telling the truth, and I love the way he spoke with passion, and what he said was truth, and it will always offend.
I think it's disgusting, I think it's outrageous, but I think sadly it's typical. Anytime you want to raise your head and you want to speak up in this country for the rights of the dispossessed, for the rights of migrants, for the rights of Muslims, for the rights of people without any legal rights, anytime you do this, you become public enemy number one. You'll become a scapegoat. So David Lammy, even though he's the grandson or the son of Caribbean immigrants, he's literally spoken up from a personal position of experience. This is his family's experience. This is not rhetoric. And because of this, because he's had the gall to stand up in Parliament, and by the way, Caribbean communities, we're not asking for some special favour. We're not asking for anything we're not entitled to already. We want what's ours. We want a fair piece of this pie, and we don't expect to have to justify our very existence in this country when, you know, Caribbean and Africans and Indians were shipped over by force, in the case of Africans, to reboost the labour force after this country had been taking part in a war of imperialism. So it's not good enough.
I know a lot of people are behind David Lammy and his campaign, but I've got my personal reasons why I'm not really a fan of him. But if he did speak out, and as a result of him speaking out, felt some repercussions, a little bit of animosity when he went somewhere for the colour of his skin, then I think it's only right, because as young black men, this is what we experience every day. The police scrutinise young black men every day for the colour of their skin. So for him to receive a little bit of racial abuse, it's good. Like, we have to feel things sometimes for us to realise what they feel like. You know, a lot of people speak about racism, but have never even experienced it. Mainly politicians, you know, so it's good. They have to start experiencing things for them to get a real perspective on what's going on.
The Caribbean community contributed significantly to the development of the UK in terms of the NHS, banking, the economy, and so on. Does the British public feel the Windrush scandal shows the lack of gratitude of the United Kingdom towards that Caribbean community?
If the person is here as an illegal immigrant and does not go against the law, then the person is rightful to stay. But if the person is found wanting, they should be taken back. That's what I say.
Well, they've been betrayed, I think, and I think it's disgraceful how they've been treated, especially when people go back to the Caribbean to bury their mother or the father and they can't get entrance back into their own country where their own property, when their children and grandchildren live. It's outrageous. It's inhuman.
They're not grateful at all. They're just forgotten. You know, the saying goes, you've forgotten the bridge that brought you over. Yeah, and that's what they've done. They've forgotten the bridge that brought them over. So let's hope they just get a little bit of a shaking and remember, you know, it's not all about what's happening here and now. It's what's happened in the past that's helped them to get to this stage.
All these acts that they've put in place that are causing a problem, they're not looking at where the problem is. They are creating more problem and saying, well, oh, we're a sovereign nation, we're multicultural. Where is the multicultural in that? When you tell people, oh, we appreciate what you have done, but we don't want you.
The lion's share of the work to do with the National Health Service, the transport links, education, we had to find that for ourselves. All of these things have happened as a result of contributions from the West Indian community. Everybody knows that, and if you don't know that, it's shame on you, because it's happening every day, all the while. I think people need to recognise that that's happening, and those people that are fighting against that, you literally are racist. That's basically it. There's no other way to explain this, because it's easy to understand.
And I think when people have come here and worked in the hospitals, on the underground and everywhere, I think they should be told thank you very much. And a thank you very much would mean, here's your papers, you've done what you've done, and we want you to stay.
I do think it shows it, but I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. One thing that I think is important to mention is right now we're dealing with the Windrush scandal. But this scandal has to be seen in the context of wider racism regarding the treatment of black people and people of the African diaspora in this country. And this is the experience of Africans anywhere they've been taken, actually, around Europe and in America. So it shows the ungratefulness, but it also shows the unwillingness of Britain to confront its own colonial and imperial history, because if it did that, it wouldn't naturally scapegoat Caribbean communities. It wouldn't scapegoat immigrants generally. It wouldn't scapegoat anybody. It would understand that Britain is actually a country made from immigration. Britain is actually a country run from immigration. And if immigration wasn't in this country would be a place that no one would want to live in. That much we know for sure.
The British are a weak nation. They're not strong. Like, even their saint is half Palestinian, half Turkish, I believe. So their queen's German. So fundamentally, what is being British, you know? The British are a nation that thieves from other countries to get their identity, you know? So 70 odd years ago, it was the West Indians. They came over, they supplied a workforce. About 20 odd years ago, it was the Afghans, the Eastern Africans, and them people there that came over. There's always a time when, recently, you get the Eastern Europeans coming in. It's always a time when the British are recruiting from overseas to build up. And as soon as they get tired of them, let's just get rid of them, disperse them, you know? So it's a sad thing, because you got a lot of West Indians that came over, served the British nation, and are getting denied citizenship, you know? But I bet John Barnes got his citizenship, you understand? Like, there's certain people that will not have trouble getting citizenship. So this is a situation whereby I feel we should just go home and don't even think about having their citizenship, you know? We don't need their citizenship. We just go back to our countries and empower our land and empower our people.
The Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants and the civil rights organisation Liberty demand an independent commission to review the operation of the Home Office. They want an investigation into the legal framework of the so-called hostile environment policy, under which the Home Office is said to focus officials on arresting, detaining and forcibly removing illegal migrants, while ruthlessly prioritising Home Office resources for this programme.
Britain owes a debt of gratitude to those from the Caribbean who helped to rebuild post-war Britain. They continue to keep this country moving. Yet the Windrush scandal underlines the unfair mistreatment of the Caribbean community in the UK. And let's remember, there's one former Home Secretary who has still to give an account of why she let the scandal of the so-called hostile environment policy happen during her watch. Her name is Theresa May.